Friends and listeners, welcome back to the Woody Allen Retrospective Podcast, the mini series or the ongoing series we call Woody Adjacent. This is the mini project where we talk about side films, related films, films that interest us, that we kind of compare and contrast to Woody Allen, or that we find some way to relate it to Woody's writings, the themes, the kind of movies, the kind of stories. We're continuing that theme. I love doing this with my co-host here, James Daniel Walsh. Welcome back.
Always nice to be here.
Always nice to have you. On the last recording, if you're watching this on YouTube, I will put a link on the screen. You'll see the picture of the last thing we spoke about. James, what was the last thing we spoke about?
The last movie we spoke about was Bliss.
Bliss. Oh yeah, how could I forget? That was my pick. And I just want to say, as always, and I don't always bring this up, I was reached out by about 3 or 4 different people, including a fan that got in touch with the cast and started telling me behind the scenes things. And James, I completely forgot to share this with you. I think he even shared me some X-rated pictures that was related to the movie that I found it very interesting. And it was all tasteful. It was related to the movie, and I love it when people reach out and share more information on the movies, especially when we pull movies out of our ass, movies that no one's even seen or heard of before, and then you guys listening have some outside information to illuminate us and make it an even more rounded conversation. Thank you so much, and I feel even more justified for picking the movie because people saw it, they also enjoyed it, and yeah, it was a great conversation. James, thank you for making me love that movie even more than I already did.
Well, thank you for introducing me to Terrence Stamp saying the word come.
James, you have to ejaculate. But today we're going to be talking about your pick, and if you guys already know, we teased a little surprise, but you can already see it in the title. James, why don't you tell the people what our special episode is going to be about?
Today we are going to be talking about the 2000 movie High Fidelity, directed by Stephen Frears and starring John Cusack and Jack Black in his first big role.
That is perfectly right. And you might as well just say, we'll touch on this later, but what are we going to be talking about a bit later after the movie?
We are going to be talking about the High Fidelity remake, the TV show that came out, I think it was last year?
Yeah, 2020.
Starring Zoe Kravitz.
That's right. We're going to talk about both. I just think it's a great opportunity to see the evolution of the material. The writer is a producer. These movies and stories are based off the original novel, and the writer, Nick Hornby had a producer role in both of these productions, so he's heavily involved. So we're going to, again, first start talking about the first movie. So James, take it away, give us the premise, and I want to hear how you feel about the original 2000 movie High Fidelity.
I love the original 2000 movie High Fidelity. It came out when I was 20, and it was a movie that I immediately connected with, and I have, it's been going on 22 years since that movie came out, and I always tell everyone, especially women, if you ever want to watch a movie and understand what goes on inside a guy's head, High Fidelity is the movie that you watch. And it's John Cusack plays a character named Rob who owns a record store, and it is him trying to figure out why his relationships always end disastrously.
Pretty much. I usually go first, but tell us more about how you connected with this movie, why this movie is so, close to your heart. And I've seen online so many people worshiping this movie. I already knew from watching this movie the first time that it was a loved movie, it was a good movie. Let me hear about your experiences with the movie before I come and rain all over your parade and tell you why I hate this movie.
It came out when I was 20 and insecure and just had my heart broken, and I understood what was happening in it on an emotional level. I understood every terrible decision that John Cusack makes in the movie. I understood. I had those kind of friends where, they sometimes drive you crazy and they sometimes are, a bit obnoxious, but at the end of the day, they're good friends. And it was just I just felt like I understood that character on a really deep level, and he would have been so much older than me at the time, probably mid-30s, but it was not the first. I would say the other movie that I always make that comparison to is Swingers, where I watched it and I was like, I get this. It's like an in joke for guys. It's like, this is what we do. The good stuff, the bad stuff, the things we don't want anybody to know we actually think. And yeah, I was completely broke and poor when this movie came out, and I still managed to go see it 3 times in the theater.
Wow. So can I ask you, did you read the novel before you saw the movie, or the movie after?
I actually read the novel a few years later, and it's pretty much it's identical, other than some of the music references are changed, and obviously the novel is set in England, so there's some British slang that is changed from the way it comes out in the American movie, but
sure.
Otherwise, it was pretty spot on.
Well, can I ask you then? You talk about how connected you are with this movie, this story. Did you feel that way when you read the book, and was you anticipating this movie to come out because of that, or was the book good, and then when you saw the movie and you visually saw that character, and you know that's what they say about movies, they can really actualize, bring to life the characters in the page. Do you feel the book did that on its own, or did the movie really take that script up to that next level for you?
Yeah, that's hard to say because I read the book after I saw the movie.
Oh, I guess I wasn't listening to you.
I was trying to sort of put the movie out of my head, but because the book was so close to the movie, it was impossible not to just see John Cusack.
I must have misheard you. My brain must have got rewired because I thought you said you read the book first. Well, you know what? That is cool. And the book is made by Nick Hornby. He's a British author. As you mentioned, there was some translation stuff to make it fit. Now, I'll jump in and say, when there was a lot of acclaim to this movie. I watched this movie about a year after it came out. I heard how great it was, a beloved movie. And I can clearly remember, after watching it for the first time, thinking, it was a good movie, but I hate the main character. And I don't understand the reverence to an extent. I felt like I kind of got it. Like, the music and being an underdog and like an indie movie. But for some reason I thought, is it really that good? So rewatching it now, I just remember hating John Cusack's character. Like, this guy is immature. This guy is just stuck in his ways. And, he just seems very, very waspish. Very, very, that's what I remember. So I rewatched it again recently. And the movie was more funny to me this time around because he seems a bit like a grump. Mm-hmm. But because he's trying to use the music and this 5-step thing of going back, using, best 5 top albums, 5 top girlfriends, all of these things, it's amusing to me. But I still can't stand the character because he's so immature.
Yeah.
And after that, I kept on thinking, why do people love this movie? Because it's a funny enough movie. Jack Black's great. Look, I love 90s movies. I know it's the 2000s, but I'll call it a 90s movie because it looks like a 90s movie. It
would have been made in the 90s, technically. So.
Yeah, production-wise, I guess it was made and it was released in 2000s. But everything about this movie from an aesthetic level is candy for me. John Cusack, in terms of acting, him playing that character is amazing. I mean, he plays that character. He embodies this character perfectly. To be honest with you, I actually thought this character was John Cusack's personality moving forward for such a long time, even though I'd seen movies like Grosse Point Blank and Con Air and Serendipity. But I always just remember, no, you're really like this arsehole in High Fidelity. But I just, because I was such a big fan of rom-coms, I just thought, I don't think this movie, like, you said this in the beginning that women should watch this movie to get an idea of a man's mind. I thought, I agree with that, but then I think, but this guy's a real immature arsehole. So yeah, they're showing you things about men, they're superficial, they're horny, but at the same time, I feel like this guy's a real Grinch. This guy, so I was really surprised. To this day, people love this movie when I kind of think, this guy's just a kind of a dick. And as for the characters he works around, they're all, elitists. And I just want to say that I'm not saying that you have to enjoy a character, love a story. One of my favorite TV shows of all time is House MD. The arsehole doctor, Hugh Laurie, is a fucking arsehole. He treats his patients like shit, but the actor's great. And when an actor can encompass a character so well, you love him for it. So I don't not like this movie, not because he's an arsehole, but for some reason, the reference for this movie is kind of like, is it a music thing? Is it, I'm a little bit lost, because to me, this is just a okay movie. It's kind of a quirky movie to me. But as you said, for someone who can really like relate to the struggle, the heartbreak, which I guess I can't. I gotta be honest. I can't even say I have, 5 long-term girlfriends that destroyed me in this way, which is fun to watch. But if you can't relate, I guess you're a little bit detached. So in a way, I wish I loved this movie as much as everybody else. But looking back on it now, it's a 90s movie. It's a quirky movie. And I can't really criticize it, because I think it's fun. It's funny. It's fun. Good music. Love the 90s theme to it. The reverence is a little bit lost on me, though.
Well, I think the thing too is, I mean, you're exactly right about the character being immature. You're exactly right about he and his friends being elitists. And that's why it was interesting, because I read a few things about the movie before we started talking about it and about the show. And I found that there was a common kind of criticism looking back on it of toxic masculinity. But the thing is, the movie acknowledges that the way he's behaving is wrong, that he needs to grow up. He needs to, the whole like trying to break everything down into a top 5 and trying to, this is why, this song is the most important thing in the world, or this is why this movie is more important than anything. I mean, guys tend to do that a lot. And, some will do it about music. I've got friends who will do it about comics or video games or all sorts of different. I've got one friend who, every time I say that I'm not gonna, he's excited to see some movie, and I'll say, oh yeah, I'm not really interested. He's like, what? How can you, and it's like loses his mind, like I'm betraying him.
Yeah.
So I identified with all of that, but I identified with this guy who kind of couldn't take responsibility for his part in these things. And as the story's going along, he's realizing, like, okay, yeah, this girl that I was with, she was kind of crazy, but I contributed to it in this way. Or yeah, this woman I was with was horrible, but I'm the one who chose to be with her because she was beautiful. And he's, by the end of the movie, grown up a little bit. Not completely, but he has grown up a little bit, and he's matured, and he's, looking at how to be a good man for his girlfriend in a way that doesn't change who he is. It's not one of these movies where by the end he is completely pussy whipped.
Yeah.
And, he's just, I'm not going to listen to music anymore because, I get it. All the stuff that I like is stupid. He still loves the stuff that he loves. He's just trying to figure out the best way to let his girlfriend be a part of it in her own way. All the stuff you say is right. It's true. He's awful. But that's why, like I said, I think women who want to understand men can watch this, because it's not a flattering portrayal of men. He's not the coolest guy in the world. He just thinks he's the coolest guy in the world.
And that's what I've been reading, because there's so many articles dissecting this movie. Going into my research, I thought, does this movie warrant such think tanks, but the more I read why people appreciate the movie, is basically what you're saying. It's unabashedly raw, and this character is an arsehole. And just like you said, by the end, he isn't even fully redeemed. I mean, the scene that, to me, and this is the thing I like about the movie, and I think the writing is really good here, where he doesn't completely redeem this guy. Not even like 75%. The guy is an arsehole even at the end of the movie. The two scenes that really bothered me, one scene in particular, I think there's a little bait and switch in this movie where he's obviously done something wrong, where the movie doesn't really tell you about, and then you find out mid-movie that a series of things happened, and then they frame it like he's a complete over-the-top arsehole. He cheated on his girlfriend, and she had an abortion, and it's like, wow, I don't even remember this. But then, about 5 minutes later, when he explains the context, it's like, oh, actually, when you look at it in context, it's not that crazy. Which I appreciated about the writing, because then I didn't want to get ahead of myself, because I was thinking, I couldn't remember this guy being this much of an arsehole. But when they explained the context of how he cheated, they were on a break, and how she had an abortion, she didn't tell him, and I was like, okay, well, this is a lot more grey. And he wasn't as much as a dick as I thought. And again, people were like, yeah, I like this story because I know people like that. This isn't trying to turn this guy into Prince Charming at the end. He is who he is, and he's trying to do better. Now, the funny thing about his main girlfriend, the girlfriend he's having most of the drama with through the most of the movie, a lot of the things she says constructively, I agree with. She says stuff to him like, you didn't grow. I agree, you didn't. You used to be a lot more optimistic. Now you're just stuck in the shop. Harsh things. And you could say that she's a bitch, and I could understand his frustration with that, because he can't find his way. He feels stuck. So I kind of like the fact I can see where they're both coming from, which again, I think is really great writing. But again, not trying to redeem this guy, and by the end saying, you're right, I fucked up. And, the way they get back together, even at the end when at his ex-girlfriend's funeral, and then they end up having sex, it doesn't seem right. It seems off. But you know what else it seems? Realistic. So by the end of the movie, I'm like, this movie is really offbeat, but there is a genuineness to this dislike, to this guy, to his actions, the way he is. People are like that. I think too many movies of the time in the 90s and 2000s always portrayed romances in there's a bad guy who mistreats his woman, and then by the end the guy changes and realizes she's the one, and he changes all of his ways and da-da-da-da. But this movie isn't like that, which is more grounded and more realistic. And I do appreciate that. And I feel like the movie ages more when you see it from that perspective. And I don't know if, a lot of people say, yeah, back in the day, that's why I liked it. And I believe you, James, when you say, you can relate to that. But a lot of other guys, I wonder, is that really the case? But yeah, like you said, toxic masculinity. I'm surprised this movie hasn't been struck down for its toxic masculinity, mistreatment of ladies. I mean, there's one point in the movie where he goes back to an ex who's like a manic depressive, and he sleeps with her because it's a comfortable thing to do. He kind of just uses her, and I'm thinking, wow, that should set off some red flags. But I appreciate that it's kind of raw.
Well, he's doing something horrible, and yes, we're allowed to judge him on that. But I think that the fact that he talks to us through the whole movie, that he's talking to the camera, that he's addressing the audience, like he's treating us like we're a friend, and that we can then start thinking about friends we know who have done stuff like that. But we also start thinking about times when we've done stuff like that, and I can look back on relationships and go, oh man, I was really in the wrong on that one, or oh God, I was a complete asshole that day. And, you know, you can judge him only so much in that, yeah, he's done some bad things, but everybody's done some bad things. And I love that scene that you referenced where this horrible secret has come out that, he cheated on his girlfriend, she had an abortion, and the way that the girlfriend has told her friend, played by Joan Cusack, about this, it frames it in such a way that all of this is like one thing. And then John Cusack goes, okay, this is what was happening.
Yeah.
And this is my version of it. It doesn't discount her version of it. It's just like, this is what I was going through in that moment. And no, it didn't quite exactly happen exactly the way she's saying it did. But then, when we break up with somebody and we're telling stories about, they did this one time. I'm sure that, I'm sure I've heard stories come back to me that exes have told about me. And I'm like, I never said that or did that, or that's not the way that happened. But I bet that there's stories I tell about them that they would say the exact same thing. So that's why I thought it was realistic, and I related to this guy's insecurity. I mean, Granted, I was 20. He was probably in his early to mid 30s. So his immaturity was more egregious than mine was. But even now, like the scene where he finds out that his girlfriend has moved in with this guy, played by Tim Robbins. And the scene where it starts showing like a really steamy sex scene between the girlfriend and Tim Robbins, and John Cusack is just lying in bed with the covers over his head, and he just says, no one in the history of the world has ever had better sex than the sex you're having right now in my head. I instantly related to that because I have done that. And it's funny because he doesn't really seem all that upset until sex comes into play. Like, when she finds out that Tim Robbins is in her life, the first thing he says is, are you sleeping with him? Not, are you two dating? Not, are you two in love? Are you sleeping with him?
That's the only part that, when you say that, this movie shows you the mind of a man, that's the only part I'm like, don't compare me to him, because even that, he's meant to be like his late 20s. He's really immature, because to follow up on that point you're saying, there's a point where they go to, she's like, not yet. Then about 2 days later, they go to dinner. He asks again, have you slept with him? And then she's like, basically, I can't say no. And he just flips the fuck out.
And what's fucked up is he'd already slept with somebody else.
Yeah.
So, he's mad at her and he's upset, even though he slept with Lisa Bonet before that. So he's a complete hypocrite, and he has no right to be angry. Technically they're not even together.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've known guys who reacted that way.
100%. I did when I was much younger. I just see him as an older guy. Like, really? I mean, and again, I'm looking at it now thinking, is it really only about the sex? Like, what about I'm like, this guy just seems so surface level. What about the time he spent with her? But he just seems so focused on, have you slept with him? Have you slept with him? So it's kind of like, I was disappointed. But looking back on it, I don't want to do a character assassination of this guy, because I understand very well this is meant to be a comedy as well. And you could say the childishness of that is played up for comedic value, because it is kind of funny how superficial he really is about certain things and how wound up he gets. It's hilarious.
Well, and if he was in his early 20s, I think you'd watch it as an audience and you'd go, well, yeah, of course he's immature. It's the fact that he is way too old to behave this way.
Yeah.
And he is so stuck in this one kind of period of time in his life that he just can't seem to let go. And the fact that, everybody, the kids that come into his record store think he's just a grumpy old man,
Yeah.
because that's what he's become, and he's surrounded himself with these people who agree with him, and he's not allowing himself to grow.
Yeah, and I know we're talking about in a very serious way just because the focal character is an interesting person to analyze now. I honestly think he's a very interesting person to analyze, written in a very interesting way, especially because one word that comes to mind is unapologetic now. When I think of John Cusack's character, I think he's an unapologetic adolescent man-child who loves music. And
he would have a YouTube show if this were made now.
And but let's scoot aside to him just a little bit and talk about the rest of the cast. Again, his sisters in the movie, John Cusack, Lisa Bonet. Obviously, people say a star-making performance by Jack Black. I think that's debatable just because every minute he's in it is great, but watching it again, I don't feel he has a lot of screen time. But the screen time he does have is phenomenal. Jack Black is such a great snob in this movie. I actually thought it was more likable. He is an absolute fucking arsehole in this movie. But he's so funny, so much energy. And yeah, seeing Jack Black here is great. He does such a great job. The other guy that works, I don't know if that other guy works in the store or is a hangabout.
He's kind of both.
Yeah, the meek guy, he doesn't really say much. Tim Robbins is here as a special guest. Behind the scenes, apparently, do you know why Tim Robbins is in this movie, by the way? Why he decided to be in this movie?
Nope.
If I told you, and guys, research this, because maybe I hit my head when I read this online, but apparently he wanted to be in this movie because he wanted a special wig made for a different movie. If he could wear this wig in the scene, he didn't mind, but apparently it costs money and he was going to use it for another film. And because obviously Tim Robbins is such a serious actor, The Shawshank Redemption, seeing him in this movie is like a just supposed, and you're just like, wow. And it's so funny. He's not in it for long, but just that scene of him and John Cusack having those fantasies of attacking him, it is comedy gold.
Oh, that scene of the escalating fantasies.
Yeah.
Of, at first it's just saying the right thing and throwing the guy out of the store, and then it's just beating him to death. And then it, cuts back to him. He's done nothing. He's just sat there and taken it, and he's been humiliated. And yeah, it's not a flattering portrayal, but that's something that I have done. It's something that, like, guys do. They, and again, the sort of, it's toxic masculinity. No, it's masculinity. It's just a common thing that guys do.
Yeah.
I think that the Jack Black character, it's funny because both him and the more meek character, whose name is Dick, they're what John Cusack could become if he doesn't change his ways. He could become Jack Black. He could just become this giant asshole who's rude to everybody, or he could just kind of roll over and let everybody walk all over him the way that Dick does. But even by the end of the movie, those two have some growth.
Yeah.
And they don't really change who they are. And that's, again, one of the things, like you said, I appreciate about this movie is that other romantic comedies would have handled this, where John Cusack would have sold all of his records.
Yep.
And he would have just, he would have changed completely and become whoever it was that his girlfriend wanted him to be. And instead, the movie says, this is who he is.
I don't think we would ever really, that film with Seth Rogen and that other lady from Grey's Anatomy, Knocked Up?
Oh, yeah.
That's essentially what happens in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
He was a man-child, then he changed his ways because he's got his girlfriend pregnant and that stuff. I don't think we'll ever discuss that as part of this WoodyAllenAdjacent stuff. But again, that's just an example of what you're saying right there.
Did you ever see the two movies, the Ted movies, the Seth MacFarlane movies, where he plays a talking teddy bear?
Yeah, there was two of them?
There were two of them.
Oh my God, I don't even remember one.
If you watch the first one...
Yeah, I did.
Mark Wahlberg is his girlfriend is telling him the entire movie, you're immature and you need to change and you need to become the man that I need you to be. And so by the end of the movie, that's what happens. And then the second movie, he's divorced her, and she's basically made out to be like yeah, she was never right for you, man. She didn't want you to be yourself. And then he, by the end of that movie, meets somebody he can be himself with. So it was like just in that little short span of time, I feel like Seth MacFarlane went, no, I did Mark Wahlberg dirty in that first movie. I need to make this right.
Wow. I'm really glad you brought that up. I didn't watch Ted 2, but it's all relative, man. That's a really great point.
Again, movies I don't think we're going to be talking about on this show.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I want to talk about a big frustration I have with this movie, which you might be surprised about. Actually, I'm very frustrated about one element of this movie. Now, to elaborate more on that, I'm going to play a clip with the author. About a year after the movie was made, Nick Hornby did a one of those American Saturday late night shows, and they were talking to him, and there's something he brought up about the making of this movie that really I found out after watching the movie, and it really irritates me, and I'll explain more. So let's have a listen to this little interview.
All right, everybody, we're back. My next guest is the author of High Fidelity, About a Boy and Fever Pitch. His latest book is called How to Be Good. Please welcome Nick Hornby. Thank you for being here. You wrote this book, High Fidelity. Great book. They turned it into a movie. I thought one of the best movies that year. I love that movie. Were you surprised that they turned it into a film? Did you know, when you wrote it, did you think this could be a film?
Well, this is a book that's set inside a guy's head inside a record store. I mean, it doesn't really define cinematic.
Right.
And
you don't think Schwarzenegger the minute you hear about this book.
I mean, the narrative climax of this book, somebody makes somebody else a tape. That's it.
Right.
I mean, it really wasn't written with one eye on the film rights.
Right. There's no Jackie Chan fight sequence anywhere in there.
I was tempted, and then they came out.
Yeah. So when the film gets made, were you involved? I mean, did you hang out on the set? Were you actually there when they were filming?
Well, I went to Chicago for a couple of days and saw them there, but mostly I hung out with them during the editing because they edited in London. And I went to see it too many times then. They have this thing, I think, film people, that the slightest change, and they think it's a different movie. And they kept phoning up and saying, we've taken a minute out, you've got to come down, it's a completely different story. And you think,
right.
What's this, a film about a whale? And
what did they change it into?
And you get there and it's 30 seconds shorter and you don't notice any difference whatsoever.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest gripes. I could not believe. Do you know how much extra footage they cut out of the movie, the theatrical cut?
Mm-mm.
I've seen about 30 minutes worth of extra scenes that are absolutely fucking hilarious.
Wow.
And I really think it kind of does a disservice to the movie because he was complaining there, they only cut out a minute, it changes the tone, that's what they say. And I disagree with him completely. The clips I watched, that I'll bring up one in particular, and I will just tell you what happens. And you tell me if this doesn't make this movie like, all right, maybe I'm speaking for myself. I think this makes the movie infinitely funnier. So there's a scene they cut out of the movie where he's hiring a female employee to work at the record store. And he's asking her, or she's asking him about his top 5 albums. And he can't make up his mind. So she tells him her top 5 albums. And while she's telling him, he keeps on interrupting her. Oh yeah, but and then she has no fucking idea what he's talking about because he's such a movie snob, right? Mm. So while she's telling him her 5, he's telling her his 5, and he can't make up his mind about his 5. So the scene goes on and on and on. And this movie shows how much of a music nerd he is, which is a big part of the movie we haven't spoken about yet. We'll get to it, the music. So the scene ends, he goes home to his ex-girlfriend, the woman he's having problems with through the whole movie, and he's talking about this woman. I was trying to hide this woman, and she asked me my top 5. I couldn't believe the nerve of her. And they're both laughing about it. And he's so neurotic, he's like, fuck! He runs out in the street, calls her on the phone, middle of the night. You know what? I'm doing it again. Here's my top 5. Da-da-da-da-da. Middle of the night, he's calling her, screaming, and I'm like, this is fucking hilarious. Why did they cut this out of the movie? Now, again, they might have thought, oh, you know, the focus of the movie is about the relationship. But the thing about this being a romantic comedy, I don't feel this movie is as funny as it thinks it is, personally. Like, rewatching it again, I was laughing at it being a curmudgeon, and there was, in my opinion, a lot of dark humor here. But I think a lot of the comedy comes through of how much of a nerd he is. Jack Black steals the show with that, 100%. Yeah. But John Cusack's character, I mean, the movie, the top 5 motif isn't used as much here as I thought it was in my memory. He throws it out there, don't get me wrong, but it seems very muddled. But the scenes they took out really focuses, and there's a lot of them. Check them out on YouTube, guys. There's a lot of them where they focus on the music, the stuff. So I'm really surprised that, and again, I guess I didn't, maybe there is a longer director's cut, but the music in this movie is cool, sounds great. It seems a little bit, and this is where, when we get to the TV series, I might feel is superior in terms of the range of music, just the range of music. But the musically, I think the movie's cool, especially, again, going back to the 90s. And again, John Cusack's character is very knowledgeable, same as Jack Black's. But musically, the movie felt a bit stunted to me, and I felt like in the series they just made, they kind of went with it a lot more with the music side of it. But I know a lot of people are going to be like, you're fucking wrong. How could you say that? That's sacrilege. The music was the best part. But I don't know, James. How do you feel about that?
I don't think you're wrong. I think that the difference is you've got a movie that's 2 hours compared to a TV show that's 5.
True.
And, they're going to have a chance to explore things a little bit more than the movie did. I think I remember that scene that you just described. I think it was in the book, because I remember that scene. I don't remember it in the movie, but I remember.
Yeah, they cut it out of the movie.
So I think it was in the book. But yeah, the comedy mostly comes, like the really laugh out loud stuff comes from Jack Black. With John Cusack, it's more, it's John Cusack kind of doing what John Cusack does, and that I don't think any other actor can do. Like, if you swapped him out in this movie with somebody else, there's an intelligence to John Cusack that you can believe that he is this person who is very knowledgeable about this one thing, and how, because he's knowledgeable about that one thing, he's so self-centered, he would think that one thing is the most important thing in the world. Yeah, the music in it, I mean, it's a great soundtrack, but it's the music is always just sort of in the background instead of being kind of in the focus, the way that the show is able to do a little bit better.
Yeah, and I know that that's one of the most appreciated things about this movie. And if we go back at 2000s, maybe this movie, was focused more on the music scene more than any other before it. So, it very well could have been that movie of its time. Just in context, again, when we're doing this in the future now, it's 20 years later, we've seen so many other movies where music plays a key part. When I think of High Fidelity, the music plays second fiddle to me, and apparently that was a big selling part of it's part of his life, and he does use it a lot. But I remember it being a lot more of a, I think I hear people pronouncing this is a music movie, a music lover's movie, and watching it again, I didn't get that as much. I got the character traits, I got the personalities and the setting and the romance, the awkward, oddball stuff more than the music. But I think as a package, High Fidelity is it's a good movie. I think it's a fun movie. Rewatching it again, as I say, the more I think about it and reading other people's perspectives and how they mention things, I'm like, you know what, you're right. This is an unapologetic movie about a stunted person who sees himself as a victim, but his story, he sees the story in a shade that isn't reality per se. And as he goes back and goes over it, he even realizes that, wait a minute, actually, this isn't the reality I remember. And again, he does affect some change, not the movie change we usually see in these rom-coms, but a more grounded and a change that a lot of people appreciated and related to. So, you know, that is why I understand why this movie is so beloved. I clearly do, and the acting's great, very great time capsule movie. And I will, I'll let you finish off your thoughts on this, but I would honestly say, now that I've seen the movie again, before they made the series, I actually wouldn't have minded the proposal of a series after watching it now. I would actually wonder what that would be like. So I'm glad they remade the series. I'm glad they made this into a series, because I do feel like this is the premise and the character is something you can lift and put in a different generation. And I'll talk more about that when we talk about the series. But James, I'll let you finish off your initial thoughts about the movie as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a movie that I don't revisit as much as I used to, because, you know, I think when you can relate to the character better, then you appreciate the movie more. Whereas I don't really relate to the John Cusack character as much anymore. But at the same time, it does remind me of that time, and I'm you know, hear him say certain things, and I'm taken immediately back to what it was like to be that age, and to be that neurotic, and to be that insecure, and to be that obsessed with certain things. I mean, for me, it wouldn't have been music as much as it would have been movies. But yeah, I mean, it's a movie that I've recommended to so many people over the years, because it takes you to some dark places, but in the end, it does manage to be hopeful. And it could have gone into a different direction, and it did in the show, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I much prefer the sort of kind of happier ending that the movie has.
Thank you, James, because the last thing I would have kicked myself when they didn't say this. The female character, the female girlfriend, who's at the main crux of the movie, the story. Do you know one thing I came to realize by the end of the movie? When they kind of got back together and started to spend more time together and reconcile the second half of the movie, I really started to see their chemistry. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see her as a victim. And I think this is the problem with the first half of the movie. I didn't really get to see their relationship, the good times, as much. But when they were actually together at the second half, and then they reconciled at the last 10 or 20 minutes, I can see why they lasted so long. They were together for years, and I can see why his heart was broken more, and I can see why she gets him. He's a fucking neurotic asshole. But there was times, even when they got back together at the end, when they were living together again, he was still being a prick. But it was rolling off her back, and I'm like, wow, this is what they're like when they're together. It works. And that actually made me like the movie a lot more, because I realized I'd never got to see this couple together until now, and it makes sense to me. She's not just some damsel woman that'll forgive him, even though it's an arsehole. I started to believe what she was saying about how he changed, and you know, he was there for at the end, and that really won me over. And at the very end, when he had that horrible proposal, even the way she accepted it was charming. I was like, these two are really off, but I can see how they're together, and that really made me like the movie. I believed them, and I have to tell you, if I didn't believe they would work at the end, I would have just said, I don't really have, this movie doesn't feel very genuine to me. But these two characters at the very end, which again, I could criticize the movie saying they could have done better to show that chemistry, but at the very end, it made me enjoy the movie, because I could see kind of what they were fighting for by the end of the movie.
And I kind of appreciate that they did it that way, because he doesn't know why they work. He's trying to figure out the whole time. So the fact that we don't know why they work together, why is she so special? Because, you know, I mean, again, another thing that has happened to me before, I've seen it happen to a lot of my guy friends before, is that you break up with somebody and you really should be broken up, but you can't let it go. You're kind of like, no, she's the one. It's like, really? Because she drove you crazy and you hated her guts, and now suddenly you're broken up and you think you two should be together. And you could see that that's what he was doing with some of his other top five. And this one, it was somebody who was right for him. He just couldn't see it, and he couldn't see why. And so the fact that we kind of learn it at the same time he does,
Yeah.
I think was a very smart choice to make.
Yeah. And although that proposal was terrible, it was very genuine to his personality, which I really like that scene, because I'm like, this does feel very authentic to his character. So again, we'll have to give Nick Hornby a lot of props for that. And I keep saying the last thing I'm going to say, but again, the original book was set in London. I still would be interested to see a British version of this, just because I feel that he's such a curmudgeon, waspy type character. I think that lends so much better to a British sense of humor. But seeing this American version twice is good. So I'll be interested to see a British version of this. I know people will be like, two's enough, but you know.
Some would say more than enough, but
we'll see. All right, so let's. You know what? I was gonna play the trailer for the first movie, but let's not do that. Why don't we just move on to the second 2020 remake, High Fidelity? Let's play the trailer, and then we'll talk about it. This is the one featuring Zoe Kravitz.
I ran into my ex last night.
So how was it? Seeing him.
You know that scene at the end of Braveheart where they rip all his entrails out and he's like, freedom! But it's like a positive thing, because he like inspired his people or whatever?
Yeah.
Like that, but without the silver lining. We got a little bit of everything. Punk, electronic, hip hop, rock. To quote our lone Yelp review, decently curated cuts, unpretentious location, owner's a little rude, 2.5 stars.
You guys have a bathroom?
If I let you go, I gotta let everybody else go to the bathroom, and I can't do that.
But I'm the only one here. You know that you do this after every relationship?
Do what?
No offense, but you tend to overthink things a little. Your ex moved back to New York.
It's cool he's back in town.
We were both so whatever about that Lily girl.
What? Lily girl! I think I tend to think about things the exact right amount. Thank you.
It's High Fidelity 2020. Let me start by saying, when I saw the trailer for this, I will hold my hands up. I thought to myself, this is gonna be a woke, Me Too times up, reimagining, putting men in their place. I was not looking forward to this. To be honest with you, I completely shrugged off the series for a while, but when you brought up, let's do High Fidelity, I thought, might as well just watch the series. And I can honestly say I was pleasantly surprised with what I saw. Doesn't mean I don't have criticism, but I have to say I'm impressed with the series. But once again, James, I'm going to let you go first because you are the resident High Fidelity fan. What do you feel about this TV series?
I just watched the show, and I can't tell you hardly anything about it.
What do you mean? You don't see an identity? What do you mean?
No, I mean, like, I've forgotten most of it. It wasn't awful. And I actually was the opposite of you. When I saw the trailer for this, I thought, this could be really interesting, because the same way that it sort of got at like the underbelly of what it's like to be a guy, this will do the same thing, but with women. And that'll be really interesting to see. And then within the first 5 minutes of the show, I'm like, this dialogue is verbatim from the movie. It's word for fucking word the same dialogue from the movie. And the first episode, the more I'm watching it, the more I'm just thinking, are they going to change anything about Rob? Are they going to acknowledge the fact that this is a woman and not a man? And are they going to address that there would be some sort of a difference, that she would react differently to certain things? No, she's just John Cusack. And once that kind of sank in, I just was like, oh God. I mean, we'll get more into like why and what the difference is, but here's my main gripe.
Okay.
You could do this character, you could do Rob as a woman and have it work and have it be believable. But the thing is, John Cusack was not Brad Pitt. If you put Brad Pitt in the original High Fidelity, it doesn't work. Zoe Kravitz is hot as shit. And I don't believe that this woman is having these problems. If you had gotten somebody who was not as attractive, then I could maybe believe it. But, and I'm not saying like you get like the woman who was played her coworker or anything, but just somebody who, you know, Rob was a nerd. He wasn't a heartthrob. He wasn't like the hottest guy in the room. He was this music geek. And I look at her and I just think, this is wrong. This if you'd gotten somebody a little bit heavier, maybe somebody who wears glasses, somebody who's not quite as hip. Rob wasn't hip. He thought he was hip, but he wasn't the coolest guy in the club. He wasn't, you know, the guy that all the women would flock around. And I just never believed Zoe Kravitz in this role. And I didn't think that she doesn't, you know, you hear her saying the same dialogue that John Cusack said. John Cusack is a funny guy. Zoe Kravitz is not as funny. So that same exact dialogue coming out of her mouth, all I could do was compare it to John Cusack. And it didn't work for me.
I can't blame you. I was surprised that they decided to take the key moments from the movie and just redo them verbatim, which is, again, I was disappointed. Here's the thing. You can execute the same jokes, right? It can be done, but this time it just didn't work. They did it too much. It just seemed like a crutch. That it's like when you're trying to force something through a shape hole that doesn't fit. It's like, you don't have to do this. You don't have. It felt like they had to take those lines out. Like, they said that in the book, they said that in the movie. Do that. It's a shame because, like you said, it doesn't feel natural, because there are a lot of times where, again, it's not the same, but they do take key parts that are the same. So when the series is doing its own thing, it just seems more natural, seems to flow better. Whenever it's copying and taking those scenes from the movie, it's just like, oh God, really, guys, you have to do it? Like, just in that clip I just played, what, Lily girl, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
It just seems like, it just seems contrived.
But when John Cusack did it, you bought it.
Yeah.
You believed that character would have that reaction.
Because he probably wrote it, you know, he was the original screenwriter on that movie as well. So he probably adapted the writing to make it make more sense, which again is what they should do. But again, the writers of the series are trying to placate to the fans, obviously. That's why they did those scene for scene shots, which is disappointing. I do agree with you. Again, I have a lot more praise to say, but I agree with you. I think it was a mistake to play the card so close to the chest, especially when it's a 2-decade gap, where it would be just better if you just go fresh in for the new audience rather than getting the stragglers that already have the book and the movie. You know, just do your own thing. But in saying that, I think people would have still been upset, even if they try to do their own thing completely as well.
You know, I hate to bring this up because this is, you bring this up and it's a hot button thing, but I'm going to just for a second compare this to the Ghostbusters remake.
That's fine.
The biggest problem with the Ghostbusters remake was that they called themselves Ghostbusters. If they had made their own movie and set up their own mythology and set up their own something that was, yeah, you could say, you'd have people say, oh, they're hunting ghosts, that means this is a Ghostbusters ripoff. But the fact that they called themselves Ghostbusters, the fact that they used the iconography, the fact that they, you know, have some of the same beats from the original movie, that was always the stuff that people were complaining about that stuck out so bad. And to me, whenever this movie or whenever this show was its own thing, it got more interesting. As soon as it got back into the territory of the John Cusack movie, it completely didn't work for me at that point. And this could have been something interesting. It wouldn't have been called High Fidelity. It wouldn't have had exactly the same kind of beats to it, but you could have done something a lot more interesting that was it just feels like they took the movie and they said, okay, well, what happens if we put a woman in the lead role? Then they just didn't answer that question. They just put a woman in that lead role and they had her act like the same kind of curmudgeon that John Cusack was, the same kind of music geek that John Cusack was. And I never felt like this was getting into the mind of how a woman would react to this stuff. It just felt like, well, this is how he reacted to it in the movie, so this is how she has to react to it. And that's, to me, the biggest misstep in all of this is not that, they couldn't tell this story with a woman, but that I felt like they didn't tell this story with a woman.
I think I partly disagree. I think you are right where it doesn't feel like it's... I wouldn't... Look, let me say this to start. If this wasn't called High Fidelity, I wouldn't watch it. Because to be honest with you, James, there's a myriad of TV shows about young people in Brooklyn or Chicago listening to music and having love. Those shows are a dime a dozen. Honestly, if it did not have High Fidelity on its title,
it would never got made.
And I wouldn't watch it. I would not watch it. That, to me, that was the catch. Now, saying that, I was prepared for some woke stuff and all that. But like you said, watching it, I was surprised that this wasn't even... I know we're going to get criticized. How can you say it wasn't feminine? How do you know what a woman... This is where we sound like we're mansplaining, so I have to be careful. But I'm going to say my opinion. I agree with you, but I feel like this character doesn't actually feel too feminine. I actually feel like this Rob is a lot more easy to digest, not as waspish as John Cusack's character. And because of that, I felt like the character was more wishy-washy, way more tepid than John Cusack. John Cusack, I knew where it was coming from. He was a man-child, somewhat aggressive, snobbish. This one was a lot more easygoing, still an arsehole, but more confused and in a daze and more drowning in her own depression, which was interesting to watch. Now, because of that, the music took over more in this series. The music takes center stage even more than the characters to me. They play all genres of music, which I found a lot more entertaining, but it took away from the characters, to be honest with you. I'm saying that the other two characters in the shop, Charisse and Simon. Charisse is the big black lady who's a musician as well. I don't want to call her the Jack Black standing because I think they're different enough, but she is trying to be the boisterous life of the party, but she's got that black woman swagger, which is cool.
I was afraid she was going, when she first comes into the shop and they recreate Jack Black's first scene, I was like, oh no. But she became her own character. Yeah. A
little bit undeveloped as it went on, like that gag of her being a secretive artist for too long until the end was annoying, to be perfectly honest. I think they should have got rid of that halfway through. But her other worker, Simon, who is actually her ex-boyfriend, that was a really good character. He was gay as well, which gave us that perspective. He had his own episode, which was one of the best episodes of the whole series. I was so fascinated by how the episode went, especially when the top 5, spoiler, ended up to be the same person. That was such a great round and round and round and round thing. And again, like you said, I have to give you credit for what you said, which is 100% true. This had 10 episodes, nearly, what was that? 5 hours to do its job, where John Cusack had an hour and a half, 2 hours. So it's not fair. They developed the characters a lot more. Characters had more screen time. But Rob, getting back to Rob, her character is just so wishy-washy. Yeah. To the point where near the end, then they kind of executed the asshole. They actually revealed more about her and why her relationship with her main guy didn't work out again. But in this series, I felt like they made her way more of an asshole than Rob in John Cusack, because John Cusack is more situational. It wasn't so aggressive. Her, she just seems like she can't commit, and she does really fucked up things because of it. And she fucks over people consistently through the series, but she's got a heart of gold. So I felt like the things they changed here was odd, because they made her more of an asshole when it really comes to the relationships, but easier to digest as a viewer, which I thought was a weird change.
Yeah, I feel like this should have been the kind of thing where, like, it might have worked better for me if I was sitting there watching it with my girlfriend, and she didn't watch this with me. She had no interest. But if I had been watching it with her, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I don't get it. Why is Rob doing this? I don't get it. Why is she upset? I don't get it. And then I look over at her and she's crying, or I look over at her and she's laughing, and I realize, oh, she gets it. I'm not getting it, because this is getting into the mind of a woman in a way that maybe I can't fully understand. I would have liked it better. Whereas this, I just felt like, with the thing too is, you're right, she comes off as more of an asshole, but that's partly, I think, because John Cusack can play kind of the lovable curmudgeon. That's kind of his shtick. That's kind of what he does. And with her, it's just sort of like, I'm watching her going, by the end of the show, it ends up very differently for her than it does for him. And I got it. I was like, I think the writers even got to a point where we're like, we don't know how she ends up with anybody, so we're just gonna, we're not gonna try.
Well, funny you should say that. You do know this was meant to be an ongoing series that got cancelled, right?
Yeah.
So I think they were leaving it open for a season 2, which, I'll be honest with you, I'm disappointed, because I actually want to see more development from her, and I want to see where they were going with it, because the relationship she was having with the guy that she ended up having a one-night stand with that was starting to develop, I would want to see where that goes. But I found this series to be an easy watch. I thought it was pleasant. I thought the music was good, cinematography, it's a beautifully shot, but it was kind of maybe too easy going. Like, there wasn't a drive. It just felt like I was hanging out at the record store, where I was a little bit more engrossed and annoyed by the movie, but for some reason that drew me in more. In a way, I like them both the same for opposite reasons, but you can argue, anyone could argue with me, honestly, why one is better than the other, where I think they both have pros and cons. The thing that interested me the most about this, and this is where we want to bring in the Woody Allen connection, is the writer. Now, when the series, this adaptation series for 2020 was being released, I actually didn't know much about the writer. I know people loved his first book. I didn't know he wrote over 10 books. He's a well-acclaimed writer. He's a screenwriter. He's done so many, he's been in Hollywood. He's an author. He's very well loved. But in recent years, he's been called an SJW. And when people saw this, it's now a woman, and it's, all this diversity, perfect time, Me Too movement now, Nick Hornby's doing this female version of fucking High Fidelity. This guy's a fucking SJW, and I don't want to watch it no more. So I found a clip. You just put Nick Hornby, what's the word I'm looking for? Not SJ. Yeah, actually, Nick Hornby, SJW, and the first thing that'll come up is why the High Fidelity series didn't need to be made. But let me play this clip where Nick Hornby, and this is this is him talking about his most recent book, and the YouTube comments were a lot of people like him, but a lot of people are saying he's just a social justice warrior now. He's so woke now. He's just trying to appease for diversity, and he talks about High Fidelity at the end. But again, I'll relate this to Woody Allen in a moment. Let's have a listen.
Today, we have the privilege of chatting with you about your new novel, Just Like You, which is your 19th book. It's a modern love story with a younger working-class Black man, an older middle-class white woman, and I have to say the age gap is not insignificant between them. And their romance is unfolding with the backdrop of the EU referendum.
Yeah.
I'd love to know more about why you chose those characters as your protagonists.
The idea of the couple came from observing a very warm relationship in a shop. One person behind the counter, the other person the customer, and those class differences and age differences were there. And I just started to think about all the things that would stop them ever from getting together. she's got a degree and he hasn't, and he's young and she's older. But then I started to wonder how much of these were constructs. One of the things that attracted me to writing about Brexit in Just Like You is that I was writing about people's confusion and how all of us were lured way out of our comfort zones to get very angry about things we didn't understand.
My favourite part of the book was Joseph's bluntness, especially when he was faced with questions that were well-intentioned but ultimately ignorant. As somebody who's mixed race, I have had questions like that before. It seems like an innocent question, but if you respond bluntly, as Joseph does, they kind of scramble and try and make it not about race when ultimately that is what it is about. But I was just wondering, as a white man, how you managed to represent it in a way that I, as somebody who is mixed race, can identify with it.
First of all, I'm just really pleased that you did identify. All I can say is that I did what I have to do in all of my writing, which is think very, very, very hard about what it must be like to be somebody who is not you. I wouldn't say I've done it all my career because my first two books were about men like me. Fever Pitch was about me and High Fidelity was about a man like me. I live in a very multicultural community, and I don't think I can write about my community unless I write about people who are different from me.
And he said a lot of the same things when he was talking about remaking High Fidelity. He wants to be more diverse, and you can imagine the backlash he got from saying stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you know, when Woody Allen, when he started to write more in the 80s and 90s, and actually Nick Hornby said this, he finds a woman's perspective a lot more interesting, which is something Woody Allen has said over the years. He's focused more on female characters. So it's interesting, the more authors write, obviously not all, some people just stick to what they play with, but Nick Hornby's been a proponent, an activist, and even, you know, someone who champions this stuff now, but he's been slammed for it as well. Regarding High Fidelity, I think his heart is in the right place. I never mentioned this when we spoke about the movie. Yeah, I think I only saw like one black guy or two black guys in High Fidelity. You know, did I feel, you know, I was more used to that, seeing that in the 2000s and 90s, you know? And, you know, when I watched this High Fidelity's TV series, it's cool. We got a gay guy, we got a black girl, two black girls. You know, it's really cool to see that diversity, and it's awesome to see he wants to represent that. And I don't want to harp on him for that, because I do think his heart's in the right place, but I can also see where people just feel like he's pandering. I don't know if you felt that way watching this series.
Well, it's interesting. When I saw the trailer for it, like I said, I thought, oh, what a good idea to tell this story from a woman's point of view. And it honestly didn't ever occur to me until watching the first episode. I was like, oh yeah, not only it's a woman's perspective, it's a woman of color. That just didn't even occur to me. And the fact that it was a woman of color, I felt like that had no bearing on what the story was. You know, like I said, when I judge what this could have been, it's more of, I wish it had been more of a genuine woman's perspective than just retreading what happened in the movie. But there's some stuff where I was actually surprised that it wasn't more woke. Like the fact that, you know, she had been dating the character, the Simon character that works in her shop, and then discovered that he was gay. And there's a part where, you know, it's a flashback and he just looks at her and goes, well, I guess I'm gay now. And I thought, really? In 2020? That's like, can't you? Well, I don't know maybe I'm gay. Maybe I'm bisexual. Maybe I'm pansexual. Maybe I'm gender fluid. Maybe I'm, you know, I was surprised that they just went, oh, he's gay. He's just gay. But the fact that the character of Rob, one of her top 5 is a woman, you know, I don't know if some people pointed at that and said, oh, see, that's woke bullshit. I just looked at that and I went, yeah, no, that seems like I can see that, you know, that's an interesting kind of perspective to take. I don't know. I feel like Nick Hornby, I give him some credit there because, you know, as a writer myself, one of the things that I struggle with now is I sit there and I try to, you know, I come across writing a new character and I'm like, okay, do I make this character white? Do I make this character black? Do I make this character a woman? Do I make this character a man? If I write a character who's black, are people going to say I have no right to tell that story?
Mm-hmm.
If I write a character who's white, are they going to say I'm not diverse enough?
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that he's just said, I'm going to try, I'm looking around my community and I'm going to try and tell the story, you know, in a diverse way because that's the community I'm surrounded by. That's great. I think that he is a 64-year-old man and he does not, just like with Woody Allen, you know, our big criticism of Rainy Day in New York was these kids would not speak this way. These kids would not act this way. These kids, you know, Timothy Chalamet is supposed to be like 18 years old and he talks like an 84-year-old man. So there's a little bit of, he's taken a risk there of trying to, not just trying to like tell another perspective. I think that's perfectly fine. You know, if you want to write a character and it's like, well, I think this character would be black, that's the way that the character should be. I always like to write characters, you know, I get an immediate sense of what I want to do. And sometimes I don't even care. I mean, there's been plenty of times where I've written a character and the fact that they're black or gay or whatever is completely incidental. It's never brought up. If you center on those things, if you make the story about those things, I think you start to get into territory where you're preaching, you're maybe alienating some people. There's some people who maybe aren't as progressive, they're trying, but they haven't quite gotten exactly to where you're at now. And if you wag your finger at them, then they're going to tell you go fuck yourself, and they're going to kind of close their minds. I never got the feeling that this show did that. There were a few, I mean, the fact that in that very first episode, when, again, she's got a girlfriend in her top 5, and she's talking about why she wasn't right for this girl. And one of the things was she says, I wasn't white. And I just thought, oh, where are they taking this? And it's weird that they're taking this in this direction with the lesbian relationship as opposed to maybe one of the guys. But
yeah,
it never smacked me in the face with it the way certain other things have, where there's a show over here, I don't know if you've ever seen it, it's called The Great North.
No, I haven't.
It's an animated show. They put it on with like Simpsons and Family Guy, and it comes on around that same time. And that show is so woke that there are no jokes. The jokes are so tame and scared to offend that, you know, my girlfriend likes to watch it, and I just sit there like, oh my God, this isn't funny. They're not allowing themselves to be funny. And I never got that feeling from High Fidelity. My big problem again was Zoe Kravitz just being, I think, completely miscast. She would have worked maybe as one of the exes, but as that main character, I just didn't believe her in that role. I think if you had gotten somebody a little bit more, like I said, a little bit more relatable to just the average everyday woman, the way that John Cusack was to the average everyday guy, I think it would have worked better. But I just never really believed that she would necessarily be having these problems in this way and that she would have turned out this way.
I kind of agree and disagree. I mean, from just being superficial, completely superficial, I think she's a short, skinny woman. Beautiful, facially beautiful, but I think she's a very short, skinny woman that I think that enough that, well, you know what, to each his own. Because again, we're just talking about taste now, and if I start saying, you know, she had a big bum and a big booty, then I could agree with you. You know what I mean? I guess, you know, maybe just somebody who doesn't look like a model. Yeah, I would agree, but her personality was shit. Her personality wasn't very good, and, you know, I even have this scene which, again, I felt like she was drowning in her depression, which I didn't feel like in the movie. I really felt like John Cusack was like confused and not facing reality. What I feel like in this series, Zoe Kravitz depression and emotion was kind of just drowning her out. I've already got this clip, so I'll play it because I thought I like this clip. You know what? I like Zoe Kravitz acting in this series a lot. What I don't like was when they force-fed her those original lines from the movie and forced her to be unnatural. It was a directing I didn't like for her. I think she could have done better. If you really think about it, there might have been some irony because her mum was in the original one, Lisa Bonet.
Yeah.
And I heard they missed the opportunity. They were thinking about making her the daughter of the one-night stand between her and John Cusack. So it would have made a bit more sense 20 years later. The timeline fits. It all kind of fits. Maybe they were hinting at that for season 2. That would have, you never know. I don't think so, though. Because you saw her mum, but not her dad.
Yeah.
You actually saw her. Actually, you're right? You never saw her dad. You saw her mum on the video call with her. So maybe that would have been a reveal for season 2.
I mean, it would have been quite a coincidence that the exact same stuff happened to her as happened to John Cusack in the first movie, but
that would have been terrible, right? Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Like you just found a massive plot hole. You just found a massive plot hole.
Like, wow, you really are my daughter. You literally say the exact same things that I do.
True. We'll never know. But let me play this last clip before we kind of wrap up about Rob from High Fidelity 2020 just drowning in her own depression.
Why don't I feel better? Why do I never get any better? Why do all my relationships end with me feeling like this? Cam's right. I'm stuck in a dysfunctional fucking loop. Okay. What's wrong with me? Seriously. I need answers. I need to know.
And that's when she starts going on again. I just don't feel like her character would even go back for her last 5. Yeah, it's the directing I had a big problem with this. I just felt like they should have went in a slightly new direction with this, because the bones are there. It doesn't have to be. I don't think the High Fidelity story is classic because of the 5-album motif is cool, and they use it a lot. In this series, they use it even more than in the movie. They use it for songs, they use it for movies, they use it for so many different things. So they definitely, they just didn't need to rely on it so much. And it got cancelled. I don't know why. I think the name recognition on a bigger network or a bigger streaming channel like Netflix might have made it work, but it came out in the pandemic. It came out on fucking Hulu. I mean, I didn't even know this. I thought this was 3 episodes, not 10. I just don't think Hulu was the right place for this anyway. I would have wanted the season 2. I really would have. But, because it was really cool to hang out in this universe because the music was great. The characters were fun. The main character was tepid. But I liked hanging out in this universe again. And honestly, I will wrap up finally by saying I wouldn't mind watching another series, a different incarnation of this again in the future. Because I do feel like, music and heartbreak are common themes, and it can be done again in a different city, a different way. I know it sounds like a weird franchise and it sounds weird, but I wouldn't mind.
The fact that they decided, it's not Chicago, it's New York. That was just one little piece of dialogue where I went, it is? Oh, I didn't even notice that it wasn't Chicago. But see, that clip you played it kind of demonstrates like what I'm trying to say is, Zoe Kravitz is sitting there and she's depressed. Why does this keep happening to me? Why can't I fix this? Why am I doomed to keep repeating these same mistakes? And John Cusack plays it a little bit manic. He's like, why does this happen to me? Why do I keep making these same mistakes? Why am I doomed to be, And that's funnier. It's funny because he's worked up. He's not depressed. He's not sulking. He's worked up. He's trying to figure this out, and he's frustrated. And with her, it's just sort of, she's kind of defeated, and
yep.
It's there's nothing funny about that. You're watching somebody who's now John Cusack is depressed in that movie. He's absolutely just as depressed as she is, but the way he's handling it, and maybe this is the thing. Maybe this is where someone will tell me that, well, you're saying that, they didn't make her react the way that a woman would react, and this is how a woman would react. Well, then that's not an interesting enough story. And you gotta tell the story that you gotta tell a different story in order to, because this is supposed to be a comedy.
How dare you say that, James? How dare you? How dare you mansplain what's interesting for a woman? How dare you?
I'm going to say it again. It's the problem that a lot of people point this out, but if you take a story, whether it's High Fidelity or Ghostbusters or Ocean's 11 or whatever, and it's a story that is, told from a male point of view. And all you do is you just flip it, and then you make it from a woman's point of view, but you don't really change anything. I always felt it was kind of condescending. It's sort of like, well, why can't we have our own woman's story that doesn't have to be called High Fidelity? It can be called something else, and it can be, put some advertising behind it. High Fidelity was a big movie when it came out because they put some advertising behind it, but there was a push behind it. Now it's all about the brand recognition. So they called it High Fidelity because if they didn't, nobody would watch it. But in doing so, all they've done is they've taken a story from a male point of view and put a woman in it. And if you don't change some things, if you don't make it its own thing, and there's plenty of movies told from a woman's perspective that are entertaining and they're funny. I mean, I'm thinking of like Bridesmaids. I don't think Bridesmaids is the funniest movie in the world, but a lot of people do, and a lot of those people are women because they relate to those characters better.
Yeah, and I also like that TV series called Girls that had Laura Dunham? Yeah, I thought it was a great series as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and they, those are stories that are a woman thought them up, a woman created it, a woman tells this story, and it's not just like, okay, we've got this thing that a man created. How can we kind of just put a female kind of facade over top of it and tell basically the same story, but not from a woman's point of view, just with a woman in it. Like that first scene in the movie, it's him listening to music, and it's like top 5 heartbreaks and everything, and it's happening while his girlfriend is walking out on him. In this version, she's sitting there and she's crying. And yes, that does feel more like, yeah, that's probably more in line with what a woman would do. But then it's not funny. It's now very serious. And I felt like the show couldn't decide if it wanted to be High Fidelity or if it wanted to be its own thing. And so it was just constantly switching back and forth. And when it was its own thing, like, I don't remember the character's name, but the woman who's basically the Jack Black.
Charisse? I think her name's Charisse.
Something like that. Like I said, that first scene, I just saw that and I went, oh God, this is going to be painful. Because she's just going to be playing Jack Black, and nobody can be Jack Black other than Jack Black. But then they let her character become something else. And when they let her character become something else, she became interesting.
Same with Simon.
Same with Simon. When he got his own episode, I was like, oh, this is a breath of fresh air. I'm getting to see this perspective it felt more, they had to create all of that. None of that came from the Nick Hornby book. None of that came from the movie.
Yeah.
And so it got to be its own thing. And when it gets to be its own thing, it has potential. Maybe that's why season 2 would have been better, because it would have gotten away from everything from the book and the movie. But as just sort of a remake of the movie, it felt very bland. Like I said, I'd be, moving on to the next episode, and I'm like, what are they talking about? When did that happen? And I'd have to go back, and I'm like, was I not paying attention? I was probably on my phone because I didn't care. And I just got really bored with it because whenever it would shift back to the Nick Hornby stuff, it just didn't work.
I mean, I can't disagree with you. One thing you've pointed out to me that I didn't realize, which is very unfortunate, that I really just had an epiphany about, is the High Fidelity TV series is not funny.
Yeah.
It's not funny.
I never laughed.
I don't find it. It's actually a drama. I would say that a clear drama. It's a very, very clear drama, which isn't a bad thing, but it's a shame because something is definitely lost there. I mean, Sharice's character is probably the funniest, but even that's not really funny. She's just a bit, sassy. She's really sassy.
But she also, by the end of the episode, by the end of the show, you're like, oh, there's the heart that the Jack Black character never had.
Yeah.
But at the end of that very, very, very end of the show, and I know that they intended to go on to do a second season and everything, but it ends with the same Stevie Wonder song that the movie ends with. And it's completely out of place with the way that the show ended, as opposed to the way that the movie ended. And it's not earned. It's, it just feels like, why are they trying to make this feels relatively depressing.
Yeah. And by the way, I have a confession to make. I actually thought this was a limited series. I didn't think there was a second season even on the horizon. So when I originally saw that was the last episode, I thought to myself, this is the end?
Yeah.
What? Because I don't want to spoil, I'm not going to spoil what happens at the very end, but they, again, take something directly from the movie, apply it to a different situation, and it's fucking off. Like, I would not believe she would do that in that situation.
No.
After everything she's been through.
Verbatim the dialogue from the movie.
Because they felt like, oh, this is such a landing point for the movie. It's one of the best last lines. But the problem is, in the context of what she's going through in the story, I actually want to elaborate. Well, you know what? I will spoil it. Just I have to, because it's really annoying that she had that little moment, that near moment with her ex-boyfriend, but then flip-flops and decides to go back to the one-night stand guy, and then he completely shoots her down, but then she basically begs him for a chance using that line from the movie, and it's terrible.
Well, I'll tell you something too. I was sitting there, and that was the one moment where I got engaged with the show, because when she's like, maybe we can get back together and maybe we can work it out. And maybe what are my chances? Like, can you give me a number? And I literally said out loud, "Stay strong, dude. Don't go back to her. She is awful, and there is no reason for you to." And good on the show in that they didn't let her off the hook. I was afraid there was a moment where he smiled, and he's being slightly charmed by her, and I was afraid suddenly he would cave in and just forgive everything that she had done. That would mean, unlike the John Cusack character, she didn't really have to learn a lesson.
I didn't believe she would do it to that extent, because I just thought that that's just something to let people to watch season 2, because I think she's got too much pride to do that. She's been through a lot of shit in the last 2 episodes, a lot of emotional shit that she caused, and I just didn't think it would end on her begging.
She had too much pride, but I'm gonna, all right, I'll say something that'll actually piss people off where I'm aware of it. She's hot. She wouldn't do that. She would just go, well, I guess that didn't work out, but there's a line down the street of guys who would like to go out with me. And so I never believed that, she would be so focused on, well, I guess I'll go back to, this didn't work out with this guy, so I'll go back to this guy. It's like, this woman has endless possibilities as far as mates go.
I agree with you, but let me play devil's advocate. Even if she was going to try to win this guy back, I thought she would go home and I'm going to make this guy a tape. Something fresh, something like that. 5, win your boyfriend back or win your lover back or something. That would have been like, oh, that's funny, that's cool. But to hear her use that same line and beg, and again, not believable because she's so beautiful and she's just been through such an emotional, for me, it's the emotional shit she went through with the ex, and then to run back to the guy in that state, I just don't believe it at
Well,
all.
and it's also kind of, and it is in the movie too, but it's pathetic. I mean, John Cusack is, what are my chances? And she says 9%. He goes, okay, and and it's this.
But they were together
moment,
for years. They were together for years.
Exactly. They were together for years. This was the woman that he'd been trying to get back for the entire movie, whereas she never really seemed like she was all that interested. Like, this guy, it's like a one night stand, and then, well, maybe we could be friends, and then, hey, why don't you come with me to this thing? And she treated him like shit the entire time, and he had no reason to want to pursue this with her. And I didn't believe that she had any reason to want to pursue it with him, other than, oh, he's a nice guy, and he's, I'm heartbroken that this didn't work out, so I'm going to go over here. And I just didn't ever believe that would happen with her.
Agreed. Now, I'm sorry, guys, sorry we had to get into the weeds of that, but sometimes I just can't help it. I didn't want to be vague about that. I know a lot of you listeners might not have watched the series, but it's a sticking point, especially since the series got cancelled. I just felt they bundled that a little bit. Even if they were trying to lead you onto season 2, it just was a bit mishandled. But, I don't know what to say. You know what? Let me end on a positive. I thought the series was going to be a whole lot worse than it actually was.
Yeah. It had the potential to be.
That is it, man. The tale of two high fidelities and the book. Now you are the true super fan. You've read the book, you've watched the movie, you've watched the series. You've seen it all now.
And I agree with you. I would like to see an adaptation that's set not only in England, but if they're going to do it that way, set it in the time, make it a period piece, and set it in the time that the book is set.
Ooh.
Make a genuine, straight up adaptation.
I don't want to make this conversation even longer, but I will just quickly say, Woody Allen having a hand at something like this. We know Woody Allen is a big music guy, but the time Woody was growing up, I don't know if like the record store, the hangout was his kind of thing. Even though he's a big music collector, he's a musician himself, I would feel like it would be a very preppy movie. But as you've said yourself, he's always wanted to make like a music documentary as well. So Woody doing something like this would be a period piece, in my opinion. Yeah. And I don't know what kind of period piece it would be, but he loves music. I think it would be an interesting movie. I would love to see Woody's interpretation of a movie of this kind, because everything Woody's done with music, I think Sweet and Lowdown was his last music-based film, and obviously the musical he did as well. Woody does music good. I would be interested to see if he did anything like this. Again, not like High Fidelity, but if he did another music-based project, I would love to see it.
The reason I picked this was I felt like the John Cusack character is immature in the way that you would oftentimes see the Woody Allen character be immature.
Yeah.
Just in different obsessions and different things like that. But like Woody's obsession in Annie Hall with bleak foreign films and dragging Diane Keaton to those, but then also talking to the audience and explaining to the audience why he's right. But then also, in other parts going, this is where I wish that I had acted differently or something. I always felt like this movie owed a lot to Woody Allen, but it had that more rock and roll sensibility to it.
Yeah, agreed. James, I'm going to wrap this up. That was a much longer conversation, but we spoke about two big projects related to the same source material. So James, I kind of put you on the spot because I'm giving you one extra choice for our next movie for discussion. Have you made your choice for the next discussion?
I have, and the next discussion will be The Meyerowitz Stories, a movie from 2017 starring Adam Sandler, Ben Stiller, and Dustin Hoffman.
Wow, an all-star cast. I'm really looking forward to seeing that and discussing that with you. And apparently that's on Netflix?
It is, yeah.
Cool. So there's no reason why our listeners cannot partake. So guys, thank you for listening. James, if the people want to catch you, where can they find you?
They can find me at manic-expression.com, and my books are available on Amazon.
They are available on Amazon, and as always, the link will be in the podcast description. You can find me at Planet Tyro. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you'll get the video versions, all the links to all the things we speak about. And yeah, guys, we hope you're staying safe in these very, very cold months. We got some warm discussions for you. Subscribe and review the podcast on iTunes. We know it's a monthly podcast, so you got to wait a while. We hope you've enjoyed this extra meaty long episode. And we're going to leave you. We're going to love you and leave you, actually. We'll see you on the next recording, guys. Take care and see you later.